This is Codified Wisdom. Sharp insights, no fluff, and real-world wisdom from leaders who want to get you further, faster. Now, here's your host, Eric Eager.
All right, well, welcome back to Codified Wisdom. And like each week, like I said, we explore the real life experiences of great leaders and the insights that they learned, but they stand the test of time. And today's guest I'm really excited to have him on here. Is Gary Boomer. He's synonymous with transformation in the accounting profession. He founded, Boomer Consulting Inc. and to this day is still one of the most influential voices in helping CPA firms modernize, embrace technology, and evolve from the compliance to strategic advisory. CPA certificate, multiple certifications, and he served, the profession for over 4 decades. And he's still helping firms align leadership, talent, technology, and processes to drive substantial growth. Longtime member of the AI CPA Council, a past inductee to the CPA Practice Hall of Fame, a recipient of the AI CPA's Sustained Contribution Award. And today, we're going to have Gary share his life, some leadership journey, from growing up in a small family business to building one of the most respected advisory firms in the profession. And what he believes the future holds for firms ready to think differently today. We're going to talk about his current involvement with EXO 2.0. For a lot of you that may or may not know, that's a global community focused on exponential thinking and scaling transformation across industries. And so, man, I'm excited. I'm welcome to the show, Gary. I'm so happy to have you on here. And and to just get started, let's start at the beginning, man. Like, what was it? What was it like in your upbringing, and how did that kind of shape your views on business leadership today?
Well, thanks, Eric, and it's a pleasure being on your show here today. And as I heard that introduction, I have to think our marketing department did a pretty good job there. I always, I always said, getting some of this recognition is based on frequent flyer miles. But I did have an unusual upbringing, not so unusual in Kansas, but unusual compared to many in the profession in that I'm the oldest of 6 children. I have a twin brother, uh, and there were 5 boys and 1 girl in my family. We did grow up on a farm. My dad also taught school, and so he had a high value of education. And my mother was very innovative. She could sew, she could paint. Um, and my sister probably had one of the best wardrobes of anyone in school because my mom could look at something at that time in the Sears catalog or some design magazine and make it probably without a pattern. So I was always envious of that. The one thing that I'll tell to our audience is that growing up on a farm is probably one of the best um, experiences for risk management. There's probably nothing of higher risk than being on a farm. And we raised registered Angus cattle. We had irrigated wheat, corn, and Milo. So there probably wasn't a day in my life that when after being old enough, I didn't work and learned how to drive a tractor at probably 6, 7 years old, and learned how to drive a car and wheat truck at probably 10 or 11. And out there, you couldn't run into anybody, but you were dealing with some pretty high valued equipment, and there was a lot of responsibility went along with the opportunity. So I also enjoyed sports, being in a rural community, got to play basketball, uh, football. Track was painful, but probably one of the best conditioning sports that I was in. And as coaches said, you really don't need to lift weights. I've watched what you do on the farm, and when you haul hay and work with your brothers, you get all the exercise you need there. So that's a little bit of a background of where I grew up, and it's certainly a long way from where I am today.
Well, and to kind of follow up on that point, you started in the family business before you moved into public accounting. What were some of the lessons that you carried forward from that family business, into your experience today when you started?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I saw early on from the profession, and I started with Pete Marwick in an internship program out of K-State when I was a junior in accounting. And I thought the profession was missing out on a real opportunity. And even back then, it was more of the independence type viewpoint because auditing was so much stronger. And prior to that, there wasn't any marketing or sales in the profession. Now that started about that time, but I think the profession has always undervalued the level of trust that they have from their clients and how the clients would like to have more services than what they're really getting. And I thought the business model was broken by only charging time for what they called the professional staff. And back
Yeah.
then they called them paraprofessionals and administrative staff. And when I got into practice management, one of the first questions when I would go into a firm was, how many administrative people should we have for every CPA? And I'd look and I said, well, it depends, just like any consultant would do. But then ask a lot of questions and found out that a lot of the value was being contributed by the non-professional staff or non-CPAs, I'd rather say, but they were part of the contributing team that created value. And so one of the things that carries on in our profession today is I don't think we value as high as the client values the team that we have and the support and the experience that we can provide. The CPA tends to focus too much on the technical aspect
Yeah.
and getting it right. And I'm not trying to discount that at all, but CPAs are really not that good, or the majority of them are not that good at the relationship marketing and sales piece of it.
Yeah.
So even today, we have people in our organization that are focused on the relationships, client retention specialists, people that have degrees in sales and marketing. So I've always felt that. I've always felt that you need to think about technology as much as labor. And our profession has always turned to labor. How do we hire more people with those skills? How do we outsource? And then technology became a second to that. How do we use technology to make those people more valuable?
And well, and then as I've gotten to know you, you were taking these chances long before, we're talking about the, digital transformation and all this for the last couple of years, but you were talking about these things decades, before a lot of, some of these things were. When did you start to realize, like you saw this, but when did you realize the profession was going to go under, this massive change that we're actually experiencing today? And back then, what gave you the courage to kind of lead this conversation? Because especially at the big firms, hey, this is the way we've always done it. You're going to put in your time, and if you want to make partner, here's your pathway to becoming a partner. And a lot of times it was just sit in the corner and watch what we do, and we'll send you out on these things. And if you work hard and put in 100 hours a week, eventually you make partner. Um, Tell us about how you said, "Wait a minute, this is broken, and I need to. Maybe I'm going to think a little different."
Well, I think my mindset was different in that I valued people that could be on the team, even though they weren't a CPA. In fact, I thought we could offer better client service by having people with diverse skill sets. And I'm not talking about DEI, although I think those perspectives are as important as well. But I learned as much about accounting, if not more, from finance majors. And then one of the first things I did when I became a technology and consulting partner in the firm was make sure I had someone, the who, that could deliver the technical skills in technology. So me being more of a quick start, and that's a Colby term, and knowing what the vision was, I had the person or the who that could perform. And so we built around that who and built our team. And I could see in the accounting profession, especially the larger firms, that as they change managing partners, if that firm had a good, clear vision that everyone bought into, to
Yeah.
transition a managing partner was not that big a deal, even though it was a big deal to the individuals. To the firm, it wasn't that big a deal. And the next person coming in would do things differently, would have to build their own team because their unique abilities were different. And the firm continued to succeed. And I can think of firms across the country. Malden and Jenkins is one out of Atlanta, Georgia. Kennedy and Co. has changed names now about 2 or 3 times. They're now Pinion, but I've worked with them way back, probably through 5 managing partners, I think, and they were successful because they had a vision. Now, has that vision changed? Yes, in some regards, but their core values have really not changed. And I think that's and they're willing to experiment. They're willing to try things. And as an entrepreneur, everything doesn't work out as you had planned. And the advent of the spreadsheet has allowed a lot of numbers to support facts that may have not been true, but the ones that are good recognize that and do what we call iteration and experimentation, knowing that they may fail at some things, but they're going to really be able to continue to adapt and continue to change with the market. And I look back in my lifetime, starting with the atom bomb. It went off shortly before I was born, and then today with AI, and just think of how much of that technology that we have available to us today has come in the last 5 years. And AI,
Oh,
most of that has been made aware of in the profession, even though it's been around for 50 years. It's been made aware of in the profession and utilized in the profession in the last 2 years. Were you using Chat GPT 2 years ago?
no,
No.
no. It's, nobody heard of it. And, you know, the, um, the changes that we're undergoing now, um, I think some people fear it. And it's funny because if you go back and you start looking at big industrial revolution changes, it's kind of funny because you're hearing about, like, in the last industrial revolution, you're seeing people that were fearful of cars and would go in and damage the Ford factories. And so you're kind of hearing this, you're seeing pieces of this kind of now that we're human beings, but you're about to change my whole world, my profession, what I've been doing. And in that kind of in that vein, and again, kind of going back a little bit in the origins of Boomer Consulting. Um, what made what inspired you to start it, and how did the early vision evolve? Because, like we talked about, you probably, as Mike Tyson says, you know, hey, everybody's got a business plan until you get punched in the nose. Give me a couple of times where you started Boomer and got punched in the nose.
Well, I had the fortune of starting Boomer within the accounting firm. And the reason I had that opportunity was I was the youngest partner at the time, and I had had a class in Fortran programming in grad school, and knowing Fortran is like being sent to Munich, but your knowledge is absolutely worthless, but your understanding of languages and logic is very, very important. So I said, if I'm going to be that person, I've got to have one, the right tools, skill sets, and mindset to make that successful. And I happened to be selected by IBM in 19, I think it was 83, to be one of 5 CPAs that they conferred with and had present a program across the country, 17 cities in 17 weeks, of how to use technology in a CPA firm. And so I
Wow.
met 4 other guys. At the time it was all guys, and then another woman joined the team. But I had the luck of being able to get outside of Manhattan, Kansas, and I've been a member of Strategic Coach for 30 years now. And as Dan Sullivan says, it's easy to get high on your own supply. And I certainly found that being in Manhattan, Kansas. But what it did is when I went to Manhattan, New York, and would speak to a group of CPAs there, their reaction was, well, how can you do this in Manhattan, Kansas? And I'm going, you're fortunate enough to have the market in New York City, but there were a whole lot of sole practitioners at that time in New York City, and they didn't have the team. They didn't have the client. They may have had a few good clients, but they didn't have the client base or the diversity of thinking that we did in the Midwest. And so that really inspired me to uh, think different, because I had a community, and not that they were like-minded thinkers, because these 5 guys would challenge each other,
Yeah.
but we respected each other, uh, and they would take you out of the comfort zone. Plus, IBM was a big thinker. They thought exponentially, while most CPAs were thinking incrementally. So that's kind of how I got exposed to it.
Wow. Well, tell me a little bit. I'm going to dive into that a little bit more because one of the things that, one of the concepts you introduced at Boomer Consulting was these, boomer technology circles and the visionary and advisory circles. What was your thinking when you started to create these peer communities and why have they been so impactful?
Well, I'll put it in terms of EXO that we'll get to here, but you'll recognize in a bit. It would be client engagement. In other words, I would get on a plane, go into a firm, determine what their needs were, do an assessment, and then kind of do a technology review report and budget of what it was going to cost them. And oftentimes the person that was head of technology in the firm had already told them that, and they just didn't want to listen. And our profession is behind, folks, in the use of technology. Uh, we we kind of pride ourselves on change, but we're slow to change compared to professions. So I always have gone outside the profession and looked at what others were doing in just general business, and clients are a great way. So if you luck out and get the right clients, they'll push you a lot more than if you just go to the office every day and do the same thing day after day. Um, so so having that community is very, very important. People you can call, and coaching, I think, is important. As I mentioned, Dan Sullivan with Strategic Coach has been my coach. Plus, he introduced me to Abundance 360 and Peter Diamandis, and then
Yeah.
that introduced me to Exponential organizations, and I got on their Open AI working group, and I met people all over the world, lots smarter than I am, but yet I had the market, and I kind of pride myself in being able to connect the dots to get the right resources to the right people as quickly as possible. So that's part of the story, and I've got to stick to it.
Man, all right. It's that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Well,
Right.
well, you kind of started to touch on the EXO 2.0 community, which I've studied quite a bit. but how did you're really active in that. What focuses, on the EXO piece of it? Talk to me a little bit more of how you think that that could actually help the accounting profession. Because it looks like when I look at understanding it, it's like, well, this should really only apply to technology companies in this. But you see that vision that it can actually help the accounting profession. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, let's go back. You mentioned the Industrial Revolution. If you think about steam and then moving to electricity, then the PC in 1982,
Yeah.
now I think we're in the intelligence revolution. And
Intelligence revolution. Okay.
yes. So if you benchmark that, and there's one other thing I'd like to have you benchmark before we get into EXO, and that is if you think back to 1900 and you look at a picture of New York City, it
Yeah.
will be almost impossible to spot an automobile. It will be
Yeah.
all horse and buggies. And then you look at 1913, the day of the Easter parade, and there's only one horse and buggy in the picture. So
And
they've
it's
gone, they've
13
gone
years.
13, in a period of 13 years, they went from almost no automobiles to it was total automobile. And the entertaining and important part of this is what problem were they trying to solve? And if you ask Henry Ford, he'd say people told him they wanted a faster horse. But the problem they were trying to solve in New York City was sanitation.
Horse maneuver.
Yes, yes. And as simple as that is, and oftentimes we miss what the real problem is. So I think you have to know what the problem is you're trying to solve. And the main thing around strategic, or not strategic coach, EXO, is
Yeah.
massively transformative purpose. And what is a massively transformative purpose is a very good question.
Yeah.
Um, and if you think it's more of a vision, and I'll give you an example of mine, and it has evolved, but I think
Yeah.
it's always been there. It just wasn't worded as concisely as it is today. But mine is to inspire and guide financial professionals and their best clients to the four freedoms. And the four freedoms are purpose, relationships, time, and money. And in our
Nice.
profession, we often focus on the money, the time,
Yeah.
not so much on the relationships and the purpose.
Yeah.
And that has served me well over the years, even though the tools and the mindsets of the profession and our clients have changed.
Wow. I mean that is I mean that could apply to any profession. So I could see that the changing where you could apply those principles. And so and kind of diving into that a little bit.
Well,
Um
I learned about EXOs, I think 9 years ago, 8 to 9 years ago at Abundance 360. I
uh-huh.
had a little bit of trouble at first really comprehending the thinking, although I've always been an exponential thinker. And
Yeah.
after 9 years ago, I built into our consulting engagement some new questions. And those
Uh-huh.
questions were, what would you do if you were 10 times larger as an accounting firm? So let's take $1 million firm and they're 10 million, or a 10 million, they're become 100. What would you do
Yeah.
differently? Well, they would all have an onboarding program. And I'm bringing this up to date,
Yeah.
both for clients and for staff. They would have a continuing education program and not just focused on the technical CPE part, but how
Yeah.
to be better managers, how to be better leaders, how to utilize the technology better, how to define their processes, how to implement change and bring people along, not have the resistance. And so I said, the only difference between you and this company that you could become is your thinking. And if
Good
you
point.
start thinking differently, you ultimately will become that company. But you have to be willing to have some confrontation, have some people disagree with what your vision is. And that doesn't mean they're right and you're wrong, or you're right and they're wrong. It means that they may not fit the vision. So if a firm has a good vision today, great leadership, they can attract great clients and great people. The
And
problem is that we don't like to have confrontation in the profession, and it's very hard to let go of a client or let
yep.
go of people in a time when we think that labor is our source or answer, whether it's outsourcing or internal.
Well, and I think I had a chance to see you, speak at an event here recently, and one of the eye-opening things I took away was that um, the next generation that's entering the profession, they don't think, what you were saying is that they don't think in limitation. They think in abundance and exponential, and that was eye-opening to me. Tell me, a little bit more, kind of what's your basis of, thinking that the next gen has that approach?
Well, we trained the next gen. We're the parents of the next gen. They didn't have to go through some of the things that our generation had to go through. And they're right on a lot of this. You shouldn't have to do 100 bank reconciliations in order to be a good CPA today. You may have to know how, but think when I started out, there were 4-column pads, and you'd do a proof of cash bank reconciliation. And when VisiCalc came along, it reduced that time and increased the accuracy by 10 times. So we've had several 10x improvements. Think of the laser printer and what it did for tax return preparation.
Yeah.
And when I started with IBM, they were using mini computers, the IBM System 34, Ultimate 36, 38, AS400. And many of those people believed that the PC and a network were tinker toys. And I kept saying distributing computing is where it's going to go. So you're going to get some pushback here.
Yeah.
And that's why you need a community that supports you. Um, and it helps if you've got the right people in that community. There's no question about that.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about, because there's three big things happening in the profession right now. Obviously, the introduction of private equity, and obviously, private equity firms are not in the nonprofit business. And so they recognize some, undervalue assets in the CPA profession. The second massive change that's going on, all the technology, that it's AI is changing and will change the lives of many accountants. And then the third thing is that just not enough kids that they don't want to be accountants because the perception is, well, that's boring. I don't want to do that green shade debits and credits. And the challenge of getting new new staff members, because we have this hourglass of what I've seen across firms where you've got senior partners that are retiring, then you got this kind of thin middle, and then you've got this kind of wide flat line. How do you think a exponential mind 2.0, how, for those listening, those managing partners that are struggling with this, how can they take those principles and apply it in a positive, exciting, not fear of the future, technology, and Hal's gonna, turn everybody against each other, in more of a positive way, that they could take this as this is a time It could be, this could be the best time to be in the accounting profession.
Well, the simple answer to that is think of abundance versus scarcity.
Okay. Tell me
When,
more about that.
when you think of abundance, you think of how to utilize those resources and add value. And that's what entrepreneurs do. They take existing resources, new resources, and take them to a higher level of value. Bureaucrats, of which we have a lot today in, in government, even in some firms, they take those resources to a lower value of. And there's an old principle called Schumpeter's principle, and it's that there's a natural evolution here that industries go through, and the accounting profession has had a good run of over 50 years, and they're still making good money, which has attracted private equity because it's a long-term play. So we should be honored that private equity has spotted our profession as one we're undermanaged.
Okay.
Our vision is understated. The demand from clients is great, and the profitability is good, but could be significantly better. So,
Got it.
so they are disruptive in that they're coming into the profession and they're solving a problem for some of the profession. They're creating a problem for others in the profession. And then I think the third is, why do we want to get into the profession? And I'll try to address that because I think this is the most exciting time in our profession that I've been alive. And I hope to be able to see some of this through because the CPA and accounting profession is very highly trusted. And we've seen in other industries, other countries, PE come in. And even in the US, we always go back to American Express and CBiz. CBiz survived, American Express didn't. But CBiz will also tell you about the mistakes they made and how they've changed their model today.
Yeah.
So I think having one thing we should know is that most firms are undercapitalized. And
Okay.
by that, I mean the tax guys drive every dollar out of the entity for tax purposes. And then rather than put it back in, we may borrow. But if we put more equity in, which private equity is willing to do, um, then we would be able to advance the firm. Remember the 10X
Yeah.
exercise? It takes investment to do that and takes a lot of training and development of people. And so we don't just technically train with 40 hours of CPE. I talked to a guy this week that
Yeah.
is about my age. He said he had over 250 hours, and that didn't include the time that he spent in Strategic Coach or Abundance 360. And
Yeah.
I've done some experimentation. I think that first year, there's probably 200 to 300 hours of training that goes on in the profession. We need to do a better job and we need to introduce those young people earlier in their career to have client contact. That's one of the things they want to have client contacts. I know our clients like working with the young people
Yeah.
if they're bright, if they're not arrogant, and if
Yeah.
they work as a team, and it's not all due to me. It's not all about me. It's about the team. And I think it's just a mindset that allows you to approach this that's much different than what most of us were trained in school. So I think private equity company is good. It's coming into the profession, but I don't think it's a fit for a whole lot of firms. There are two decisions. Do I want to look into private equity or do I want to invest in the infrastructure and the people of our firm to succeed in the future?
And it doesn't seem to be, this is you got to choose a path. It appears to be now. It's not I'll just wait and see. It appears to be, it's going to be A or B.
Yes, and one of the mistakes the accounting firms have made is they haven't identified their stars quickly enough,
Okay.
and they tend to take technical skills over other skills in the evaluation process. So I go back to what Dan Sullivan says, the three ways to create leadership, or three ways to create value are leadership, relationship, and he says creativity. I say innovation. So
Yeah.
those three things are what clients are looking for today. And they're also what the young people in school are looking for. And I contend that CPAs, if they have a mentorship program, that's far better, or a coaching program is even better than a mentorship program.
Yeah.
That year or so is far better spent in a firm experiencing the profession and client work than it is in getting 150 hours. And
Yeah.
so there's the 150-hour rule is being repealed in some states. And believe me, I'm a believer in lifelong learning, and I believe it's a two-way street. It's not just top down or professor to student.
Yeah.
We can learn from the young people can learn from us. And once you get that in your head, and Jack Welch did that at GE back when GE was being
Oh,
quoted all the time.
yeah. Yeah.
And just look at that top 100 firms. How many firms in the top 100 today will be there in name in the next 5 years?
Oh, I think I'm waiting because you made a prediction at this event that I saw as well. And how many firms does Gary Boomer think in the coming years? How many firms are we going to have, in your opinion?
Well, I think the big four will grow to the big six. You know,
Okay,
it was the
maybe Big
big
Eight
the
when
big
I was in
eight when
school.
I got out of school. Um, and there are some firms positioning for that. And just think of the merger and acquisition business going on. And these are not 10, 20, $100 million firms being acquired. These are large firms that are coming together. Moss Adams, uh,
Yeah,
and
Baker Tilly. Yeah,
international firms, not just US firms. Now, the one thing I can predict is the top 100 will stay the same 100. It'll just be different names. But the important part is that break line today will
yeah.
at least double over the next 5 years, if not triple, of who the 100th firm is in the top 100. And my guess is at least a third of those names, maybe more, won't be there.
Wow, wow. That's a pretty bold prediction.
Now
But
let's go to the rest of the profession, which many in the audience today are involved in that. There are about 45,000 members of the AICPA.
yeah,
And according to my research, there's about another 45,000 bookkeeping accounting entities. And
yeah,
so there's about 90,000. And how are they going to compete as sole practitioners with all the need for this infrastructure? And I know in EXO, one of the things they talk about is the next $1 billion company that has $1 billion valuation, but only has one or two employees.
yeah, yeah. I've read that too. That's interesting.
So I think you're going to see revenue per full-time equivalent increase in all of the firms, and that's why metrics are so important. It's like
Yeah,
golf score. Know your own metrics and then improve upon those. And we've been tracking metrics since 1999 when we started our first community, and some interesting metrics. Uh, and we're reducing here in the or reducing. We're introducing here in the next week the
yeah,
2004 metrics. But as I look at those metrics going back over, um, in 2023, the average revenue per full-time equivalent, and that's defined as 2,080 hours,
yeah.
regardless of who worked it, was 232,000.
Okay.
Now, if you're a Kansas or Missouri rural firm, that may be high, and because of leverage, you can still make very good money. And if
Yeah,
you look at Rosenberg's report or any of those, the average income per partner has continued to increase very rapidly over the last 10 years. Now,
Yeah.
a number that most don't understand. In these firms, only in 2023 of the surveyed firms, only
Yeah.
46.6% of their total hours were charged.
So
Less than
for
50% of total hours worked were charged to the client.
so I'm working two, and I'm charging one that I mean, they're paying for one.
Yes. And so they're leaving money on the table, saying the market won't let them charge more. Well, the market will with their best clients.
Yes.
The other number is they're spending about $15 per hour on technology. That's anything from communications lines to their internal equipment, to their outsourced equipment, to their support, managed services, anything. They're spending about $15 an hour. And the average charge rate of those firms was $240 an hour.
Wow.
And they only had one technology support person for every 36. And yet technology is one of the most important things in the service line today, not just in the support of the internal network of the firm.
Wow. I
So,
mean,
if I can, I just want to give you a resource. I took this Exponential organization, and this year in Accounting Today, I've had an article in there, I think, for the last 20 years. On a monthly basis, I broke down the 10 attributes. And if you go out and just do a Google search, or today I would recommend a AI search, you will find the 10 attributes of an EXO. The good
yeah.
news is that CPA firms are already delving into many of those. They're just not taking it seriously enough and may not have the right person in that seat on the bus. But
Got it.
they're doing things like staff on demand, which is
Yeah.
outsourcing. And
Yep.
there's opinions there all over the world.
Oh yeah.
I've
Oh
heard
yeah.
them, but I think you need to source, and digital agents will be part of that.
Oh yeah.
Algorithms, you're going to see push button tax returns come into play from some of the vendors uh,
Yeah.
this year, and you're definitely going to see better ways to aggregate data upfront and also present the data rather than in the traditional balance sheet income statement with our disclaimers on the front. You're going to see those disclaimers in fine print with graphics that the client understands much better than what we do sometimes. I think
Wow.
they like graphics, and they're going to engage with their clients. Just go out to lunch with a client, ask them what's keeping them up at night. It's not their financial statement or their
Yeah.
tax return.
It's I bet you, and I've built multiple companies. It is always is there something out there that I don't know about that's going to bring down my company that I should have known about?
I've always referred that as what I don't know that I don't know.
Yeah.
This could cost me the company. And that's
Yep.
where even having these communities and talking to the clients is so important. And I just suggest you Google EXOs, and there's a chart that has all of the attributes. But the other thing that people my generation didn't do, but they did it in a different way, is we joined social clubs like Rotary, Kiwanis, Lion.
Yeah.
Today, uh, that those are still around, but for their old guys, for the most part. Young people use social media, and there's so much advantage to that. And I don't watch a lot of TV, but I view a lot of YouTube videos.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think you or somebody else reminded me, YouTube is the second. Well, I think AI may be changing this, but as a few years ago, beside Google, YouTube was the 2 most searched area for information.
Yeah, and there's so many tools to learn with today. I'll just caution people, most in the accounting profession have access to the Microsoft suite, and therefore they're using Pilot or Copilot, I should say.
Yeah.
And that is not the best tool out there. And I'm not trying to tell you ought to switch, but I'm saying if you're a smaller firm and have the Google Workspace, you probably have a more powerful uh, platform than Microsoft. And if you ask the experts in this, who's going to win the game right now in the last 2 weeks, they're predicting Google and Grok. Uh, and so Chat GPT, will be part of that. Perplexity will be part of it. These big companies are going to merge, and there's going to be tremendous competition, which is good for the consumer. But if you want to become what I would call, I wouldn't call it an expert, I would call it more just a proficient user,
Yeah.
daily is the key. I don't know that there's anybody that's a true expert on this that knows all the aspects and how to apply it to the firm and your clients.
Yeah. I think to your man, because I'm saying man, we could do 2 hours on this. I am so fascinated with, especially you're tapping into with EXO and abundance three, and that group is, I mean, there's cutting edge and then there's real thought leaders. And then I know the people involved in that space are um, way ahead of the curve in their thoughts and their processes. And I guess the only thing I took away from the study and part of EXO, one of the things is that for firms, there's a self-defense mechanism, for those who really do want to, hey, be an exponential organization, tell a little bit more about that self-defense mechanism for the ones that are trying to be exponential, and you get that thought leader and that energetic, it could be any partner who just catch. I don't want to say us old guys can't get excited about new technologies because you're living proof of that.
Well,
But
EXO calls it the corporate immunity system or the
yep,
organizational. So it's easier for us to understand as CPAs if we look at the government. We all think the government's inefficient, but yet they have an immune system to change. And in all fairness, they haven't had the best assets. And by assets, I'm talking about technology, workflow, and maybe even some people that are there for the wrong reasons. Uh,
yep,
we won't get into the political side of this, but let's bring that back to our firms. We have immunity systems to change. So one of the things I recognized several years ago is we don't really have the change management infrastructure in most organizations. We
yeah,
have two of our consultants that are certified change management people, in the PROSI change management methodology. We
yeah,
also have Lean Six Sigma people, and I saw that in India in 2004. They were all using Lean Six Sigma to become more efficient and cut
yeah.
out the loops in their workflow. And you're right, we could go on here, and I'd suggest, we probably put a lot out on the buffet today.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah,
do another session of this at some time,
absolutely.
and
I would more than welcome that. You know, um, one of the things we always do on this show is that before we wrap things up, it is always I always like to ask people if all of a sudden AI has created a time machine and you could go back in time and catch the younger Gary Boomer and some point in his life that you could give him some wisdom that, hey, you're not gonna have to learn the hard way because I'm gonna give you this little piece of advice, this wisdom, so that you can exponentially move faster ahead. Is there a time where you would go back and what wisdom would you give yourself?
Well, I think it has to be in identifying what your unique abilities are. We're,
Okay.
we're, we're all born with unique abilities, and they differ. And the Kolbe Index, Kolbe, is a good way to learn about that. And that's why I had 2 grandkids in the EDGE program at Strategic Coach going into college. I
Yeah.
wish I would have had that knowledge about myself and what I really was passionate about, and not have to defend that for somebody else that thought I ought to go into this or that. I had to figure that out on my own. And so I think in helping young people decide what their unique abilities are and then match them up to the professions for the future, not the professions of the past, would be what I would.
Oh wow, that is what advice. That is I think we all struggle with it takes us years to find our our God-given talent and what makes us special than anybody else. Well, man, that is again, I want to thank you, for this. This is supposed to be a half hour, but I couldn't help myself. So I apologize for those
Break it up
listening
into
because I
2
just
parts.
couldn't I couldn't help myself, man. You have such great information. And, I want to, again, thank you. I'm going to take you up on that because I think we put some stuff on the buffet, and I think some people are going to want us to dive into some of those topics even more explicitly. But if people want to know more, if they want to know more about, hey, how can I engage? How can I learn more? Where can they go to get some more of your guidance and wisdom?
Well, probably the best place to go is boomer.com. That's our website. I was fortunate to be an explorer and got that website early on. So boomer.com, and you'll see our team on there. And it's really about our team. I'm the old guy. I'm the dot connector. I love working with young people and helping inspire and guide them into being leaders in our profession. So they can see about the Boomer Knowledge Network that's there and other services that our company has, but we'd love to help inspire and guide the profession.
Oh man. Well, man, with that, I'm gonna say I really enjoy these conversations. And hey, I just want to make sure for everybody that's listening, out there, and you find it on your favorite podcast platform. Hey, listen, the reason we keep doing this week in and week out is just to help the next generation of entrepreneurs and business leaders, get a little bit of a nugget, a piece of information. So you don't have to learn lessons the hard way. Don't make the dumb mistakes I've made and a bunch of other people made. There's no reason to repeat those. So we hope that when you listen to this, you take away something that's just going to make a difference and help you get further faster is what the purpose of this, podcast and what we're all trying to do. So thank you again for your time, and we'll look forward to you next time on Codified Wisdom.
Thanks for listening to Codified Wisdom with your host, Eric Eager. Want more? Subscribe and follow Codified Wisdom on YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. To learn more about Eric Eager and how 4Impact Data helps leaders get further, faster, visit 4impactdata.com.